Have you ever noticed how men who need something keep showing up in your life over and over again? Men who need to be rescued, whether from their insecurity, life's problems, or a complicated past. And every time, as if hypnotized, you feel an overwhelming desire to come to their aid, to take on their burdens, to become their support system, their guiding star. You throw yourself into this battle, exhausting yourself, giving every last bit of your energy, hoping that when he is finally fixed, healed, or saved, he will see you, the one who did the impossible for him, and reward you with the very love you've been dreaming of. But that's not what happens. He either leaves, having found a new rescuer, or he stays, but continues to drain your energy, never becoming the whole partner you dreamed of. And you are left with a profound sense of disappointment, exhaustion, and a tormenting question. Why am I drawn to broken men again and again? Why do I choose pain over joy? Why do I become a mommy for them instead of a beloved woman? This is no accident. Behind it lies a deep psychological principle that Carl Jung uncovered after years of studying the human soul. He called it a game of shadows, projections, and unintegrated archetypes. The rescuer syndrome isn't nobility. It's a psychological trap. It's not true love. It's a subconscious compensation. It's not spiritual growth, but emotional self-destruction, disguised by the noblest of motives, the desire to help. How many more relationships will you spend trying to fix someone else instead of healing yourself? In how many more stories will you sacrifice your authenticity for the sake of someone else's immaturity? The price you pay for your endless willingness to rescue isn't just fatigue. It's the slow but certain destruction of your soul, a gradual dissolving of your true self under layers of pretense and self-denial. You believe so strongly that your value lies in your ability to fix and save that you stop seeing yourself outside of this role. And that is a tragedy. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he wasn't referring to an abstract philosophy of evil. He was pointing to the most important and neglected part of your psyche, a storage unit where all the emotions, desires, and impulses that your conscious mind deems unacceptable are stockpiled. For those who constantly try to please, save, and fix others, this shadow becomes a psychological time bomb. You don't just attract broken men. You project onto them the parts of yourself that you consider broken, unacceptable, and in need of fixing. Your need to save another is a deeply rooted need to save yourself from encountering your own vulnerability, your own imperfections. And every time you rush to the aid of another project, you aren't saving him. You are running from yourself. You aren't healing him. You are postponing your own healing. The rescuer syndrome, the golden cage of your kindness. Let's take a closer look. What is the rescuer syndrome? It's a compulsive drive to help others, especially those who seem weak, vulnerable, or broken. It's the need to be needed, to be indispensable, to be the one without whom the other person cannot cope. On the surface, this appears to be a display of the highest virtue, compassion, altruism. But Carl Jung taught us to look deeper, beyond the surface manifestations. He said that behind every commendable but excessive quality, there often lies an unintegrated shadow, a subconscious motive that controls us, preventing us from being truly free and whole. Imagine that your desire to save is not a compass pointing to someone in need, but a mirror reflecting your own internal traumas. You unconsciously seek out those who remind you of your own inner brokenness, of those parts of you that were once rejected, suppressed, or wounded. And by trying to fix them, you subconsciously hope to fix yourself. It's an attempt to heal old wounds through the external world, through another person. But as a rule, this only makes them worse. The men who are drawn to you like moths to a flame are not a coincidence. They unconsciously sense your need to rescue, your willingness to give everything, your inability to set healthy boundaries. They become the perfect container for your projections. You see in them a potential they don't see in themselves, and you desperately try to help them realize it. You believe that your love, your patience, your sacrifice can change them. But this is an illusion. Jung would say that you put on the mask of the great mother or the healer, but you do it not from a place of fullness, but from a place of emptiness. You are trying to earn love and validation by being useful. You feel that if you are good enough, sacrificial enough, understanding enough, then you will finally be valued and loved. But such a love, based on need and dependency, will never be fulfilling. It will always wound you. Your own self-worth, your self-esteem, becomes a hostage to someone else's problems. You measure yourself not by who you are, but by what you can do for others. And when a broken man doesn't change, you feel not only his failure, but your own. You get angry, you feel disappointed, but you keep holding on, because letting him go means facing the emptiness inside yourself, facing the question, who am I without this role? Who am I if I'm not needed? The rescuer's shadow, the hidden motives of your endless kindness. Let's dive deeper into the Jungian concept of the shadow. Jung argued that the shadow is not only the bad things we suppress in ourselves, but also the good things we refuse to acknowledge. For a person with rescuer syndrome, the shadow can be their own suppressed needs, desires, and boundaries, or even their own vulnerability and brokenness, which they project onto others. For example, your shadow might contain 1. The need to be rescued. Paradoxically, you, the rescuer, may deep down need rescuing yourself. But you suppress this feeling, because in your belief system, being weak or needy is bad. So you flip the script and become the rescuer for others. You give them what you desperately want to receive. And when they don't rescue you in return, you feel a deep sense of injustice and resentment. 2. The need for control. By saving someone, you gain a certain power over them. You control their life, their decisions, their well-being. This can be a subconscious compensation for a feeling of powerlessness or lack of control in your own life. Jung said that the thirst for control is often a mask for deep fear, a fear of chaos, of uncertainty, of your own internal disorder. 3. The fear of being unimportant, unloved. If you don't rescue, you won't be loved. This is a deep subconscious belief, often rooted in a childhood where you could only get love or attention by being useful or sacrificial. Your kindness becomes a currency you use to pay for another person's presence in your life. But the price for this will always be your true self. 4. Your own unaccepted brokenness. You project your own wounds, traumas, and flaws onto the broken man. And by trying to heal him, you are unconsciously trying to heal yourself. You cannot accept your own imperfections, so you look for their reflection in someone else, giving you a chance to fight them at a safe distance. Without touching your own pain. Jung observed that many good people are driven not so much by compassion as by fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of their own anger, fear of seeming selfish, fear of being alone. Your desire to please and save others is not a virtue, but a defense mechanism. Your constant availability is not generosity, but a way to remain loved. Your refusal to express negative emotions is not spiritual growth, but a fear of loneliness. Think honestly. How much of your willingness to save is tied to being seen as a good person, rather than a genuine expression of your values? How often do you use kindness as a currency, subconsciously hoping that by giving enough, you will receive the same in return? This transactional mindset, where kindness becomes an emotional insurance policy, does not lead to true intimacy, but only to a subconscious scorekeeping, hidden expectations, and inevitable disappointment. The consequences of rescuer syndrome, the price of your soul. The rescuer syndrome is not just an internal struggle. It is a powerful magnet that attracts a certain type of person and a certain type of relationship into your life. And unfortunately, the consequences of this dynamic are always painful and destructive, both for you and for those you try to save. 1. Constant exhaustion and burnout. Your energy is a finite resource. When you constantly give without receiving an adequate exchange, you drain yourself dry. You feel empty, tired, and emotionally burned out. Your own life remains in disarray while you are busy with someone else's. 2. Deep disappointment and resentment. You invest all your energy, time, and hope into the broken man. You wait for him to change, to appreciate your sacrifice, to finally become that ideal partner. But he doesn't change. Or he changes, but not because of you. And then he leaves. And you are left with a sense of bitter disappointment, as if you've been betrayed. Resentment builds up, eating you up from the inside. 3. Loss of your own self. In the role of the rescuer, you focus so intensely on the other person, on his problems, his needs, that you completely lose yourself. You stop understanding what you want, what you need, who you are without this role. Your identity dissolves into the lives of others. Jung would say that your persona, social mask, merges so completely with the rescuer role that you forget who you truly are underneath. 4. Attracting immature partners. You become a magnet for those who are not looking for a partner, but a mommy, a nanny, a therapist, or a financial donor. These men are not interested in mature, equal relationships. They are looking for someone to take responsibility for their lives. Your subconscious message is, I'm here to solve your problems. And they answer that call. 5. Lack of reciprocity and true intimacy. A relationship built on a rescuer-victim dynamic can never be truly intimate. There is no equality, no mutual respect. One gives, the other takes. One fixes, the other is broken. These are functional relationships, not partnerships. You are not loved for who you are, but for what you do. And that always hurts. 6. Hindering your partner's growth. Paradoxically, your drive to save doesn't help the man. It hinders him. You rob him of the opportunity to face his own problems, to take responsibility for his life, to find his own solutions. You deprive him of his own path to growth. Jung believed that every individual must walk their own path of individuation, their own encounter with the shadow. By intervening, you deny him this opportunity. Imagine your psyche as an ecosystem. If you overdevelop one element, your accommodating side, your willingness to save, while suppressing another, your capacity for healthy resistance, your boundaries, your needs, the entire system becomes dangerously unstable. The good person and rescuer image you've so carefully cultivated doesn't nourish your soul, it consumes it. Every time you betray yourself by saying yes when you want to say no, every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, every time you tolerate poor treatment because you're afraid of seeming selfish, you are not being kind. You are being an accomplice to your own diminishment, the path to healing, integrating the shadow and finding wholeness. According to Jung. Now that we understand why you are drawn to broken men and the consequences it leads to, let's talk about the path to healing. Jung called this path individuation, the process of becoming a whole, authentic individual. For you, this means ceasing to be a mommy and becoming a beloved woman. This isn't about becoming selfish or heartless. It's about becoming whole. Here are the key steps based on Jungian principles. 1. Recognize and embrace your own brokenness, shadow integration. This is the first and most difficult step. Stop projecting your own insecurities, fears, and unfulfilled desires onto others. Ask yourself an honest question. What in me needs healing, acknowledgement, and love? Perhaps you yourself feel broken or inadequate, but are afraid to admit it. You seek a reflection of this brokenness in others, so you can fix it externally. What to do? Instead of rushing to help a man you're attracted to, pause. Consider which of his qualities you so desperately want to fix are actually your own suppressed aspects. If he's afraid of responsibility, perhaps you're afraid to let yourself be irresponsible sometimes? If he can't find his purpose, perhaps you're suppressing your own talents and dreams? Acknowledge these parts in yourself without judgment. Start working on them. 2. Develop your inner animus and anima, balancing inner masculine and feminine. According to Jung, every woman has a masculine aspect, animus, and every man has a feminine aspect, anima. If your animus is undeveloped or suppressed, you might seek it externally in a man, trying to complete yourself through him. Or your animus might be overactive, causing you to be too assertive, controlling, and taking on masculine roles in the relationship to save him. What to do? Allow yourself to express healthy aggression, the ability to defend your boundaries. Purposefulness, building your own life, not someone else's. And rationality, analyzing situations instead of succumbing to rescuer emotions. This is your inner animus. Also, develop your anima, intuition, creativity, receptivity, softness, and the ability to receive. When these two principles are balanced within you, you stop looking for missing pieces in others. 3. Establish healthy boundaries, self-respect, and integrity. Boundaries are not walls that shut others out. They are essential psychological structures that define where you end and others begin. A lack of boundaries is an open invitation for exploitation. Rescuers often can't say no because they are afraid of being bad or selfish. What to do? Start small. Decline minor requests that are inconvenient for you. Respond to messages when you have time, not instantly. Don't take on other people's problems unless you are asked, and it's within reasonable limits. Learn to listen to your body. It often signals a boundary violation first: fatigue, irritation. Jung would say your discomfort isn't a sign you're not good enough, but an indicator that your system recognizes a malfunction. 4. Abandon the rescuer persona. Authenticity. Your persona is the mask you wear in society. If your persona is the eternal rescuer, you feel obligated to live up to that image. But it's not you. It's a role. What to do? Realize that you are valuable not because you rescue, but because you are. Ask yourself, who am I if I'm not rescuing? Who do I become if I'm not constantly helping? It's a scary thought, but this fear reveals just how much you've confused your identity with your essence. Start expressing yourself outside of this role. Find a hobby where you don't have to be useful. Develop talents that aren't related to helping others. 5. Redirect your rescue energy toward yourself. Self-integration. Your ability to empathize, to give, to heal is an immense power. But you are directing it outward instead of using it for your own growth. What to do? Start rescuing yourself. Invest the same energy, patience, and understanding into your own needs. Work through your past traumas. See a therapist if necessary. Develop your talents. Take care of your body. Invest in your education, your dreams, your well-being. This is not selfishness. It is a vital necessity for achieving wholeness. 6. Allow others to walk their own path. Wisdom and acceptance. Jung said that every person must walk their own path of individuation. You cannot do it for them. Your rescuing can deprive another person of their own experience, their lessons, their strength. What to do? Observe. Support if asked and if it's appropriate, but do not intervene, solve, or fix. This is incredibly difficult, especially when you see a loved one suffering. But true love is also the ability to let go, to trust another's journey, and to allow them to bear their own consequences. This is not indifference, but a deep respect for their right to their own growth. 7. Seek relationships based on reciprocity, not function. Mature love. As you begin to heal yourself and integrate your shadow, you will stop attracting broken men. You will start radiating a different energy, the energy of wholeness. And other whole people will be drawn to this energy. What to do? Be very attentive to how you feel in a man's presence. If he triggers an overwhelming desire in you to fix, help, or rescue him, that is a red flag. Look for those who respect your boundaries, who are capable of giving, who are interested in you as an equal partner, not as a function. True love, according to Jung, is only possible between two self-sufficient individuals who are not looking for missing pieces in each other, but who choose each other out of fullness. The process of individuation, as described by Jung, the journey to finding one's true self, requires the integration of both the light and dark aspects of the personality. For the pleaser and the rescuer, this means acknowledging that within you lives not only a selfless giver, but also someone who needs, wants, judges, and yes, sometimes resents. These shadow elements are not character flaws to be eradicated. They are essential aspects of your humanity that demand to be acknowledged and integrated into a more complete sense of self. Imagine your psyche as a symphony, if you only allow the benevolent notes of rescue and self-sacrifice to play, while silencing the selfish notes of need and boundaries. You create not harmony, but impoverishment. The music of your true self requires the full range of notes, from gentle compassion to firm boundary setting, from generous giving to unapologetic receiving. How much energy have you spent maintaining the illusion that you are made only of acceptable qualities, that you are only a rescuer, only a helper, only understanding? How tired are you of this internal war, where one part of you is constantly suppressing another? Jung would tell you that it is this fragmentation, not your dark qualities themselves, that is the true source of your suffering. Your psychological pain comes not from having a shadow, but from denying its existence and fighting its integration. Reclaiming your disowned shadow does not mean becoming selfish, rude, or heartless. It means becoming whole. It means recognizing that healthy selfishness is necessary for sustainable giving, that anger protects your boundaries from violation, that being discerning about who deserves your energy is not judgment, but wisdom. Imagine the freedom of being able to say no without guilt, to express anger without shame, to put yourself first without apology. Imagine relationships founded not on what you can give, but on mutual respect, reciprocity, and honesty. This is not a dream. It is what becomes possible when you integrate your shadow instead of projecting it onto others or turning it against yourself. This integration takes courage. The courage to disappoint people who have grown accustomed to your limitlessness. The courage to face rejection when you stop playing the rescuer. The courage to find out who values you for who you are versus who values you for what you can do for them. Are you willing to make this discovery? Are you willing to distinguish those who love your authentic self from those who simply appreciate your utility? The path to wholeness requires this differentiation, not as an act of judgment, but as an act of recognition of which relationships support your journey toward authenticity and which do not. Your kindness, when it comes from a place of wholeness rather than trauma, becomes a conscious choice, not a compulsion. It is born from abundance, not neediness, from freedom, not fear. This transformed kindness has discernment. It knows when generosity enables versus when it empowers, when understanding heals versus when it condones poor behavior, when forgiveness liberates versus when it permits abuse. Jung would say that this discerning kindness, rooted in psychological integration rather than fragmentation, is infinitely more powerful than the automatic self-sacrifice you've been practicing. It does not deplete, it replenishes. It does not erase your boundaries, it honors them. This transformed kindness does not diminish your individuality. It expresses it. It is a profound shift from unconscious goodness to conscious kindness, from reflexive giving to intentional generosity. But such a transformation is impossible as long as you deny your shadow, suppress your needs, and abandon yourself in the name of virtue. The path to true kindness begins with the brave act of reclaiming the parts of yourself you have rejected in your quest to be good enough to save. When your kindness flows from fullness, not from emptiness, it becomes not only more sustainable, but more authentic. The manipulators in your life, the takers who do not give, the boundary crossers who act with impunity, the ones who demand understanding, without offering it, are not there by accident. They have detected something in you that you have failed to see in yourself. Your belief that to have needs is to be needy, that to set boundaries is to be selfish, that to put yourself first is to be unkind. This subconscious belief system creates a perfect energetic match for their entitlement, their boundary violations, and their self-centeredness. Jung would point out this is not a simple coincidence or a poor choice, but what he called a shadow projection. The very quality you most condemn in yourself, selfishness, anger, entitlement, is what you unconsciously attract and enable in others. Notice how easily you may forgive in others what you condemn in yourself, how you tolerate behavior from them you would never permit from yourself. This is not a coincidence. It is a compensation. Your psyche is trying to create balance by allowing on the outside what you deny on the inside. The solution is not to choose a different partner, but to integrate your shadow. Once you can accept and honor your own needs, your own boundaries, and your own healthy anger, you will cease to be an energetic match for those who exploit their absence. The flow of energy in relationships follows a primary psychological law. Energy flows where attention goes. When your attention, care, and worry are perpetually directed outward and not inward, you create an energetic imbalance that is, by definition, draining. Imagine your psychological energy as a finite resource. When you are in a state of constant giving without receiving, constant understanding without being understood, constant accommodation without being accommodated, you are not being generous. You are being energetically reckless. The exhaustion you feel is not just physical. It is a state of energetic depletion. The emptiness you experience is not a passing mood. It is the result of a one-sided energy exchange that has become chronic. Jung would advise you to recognize that a sustainable relationship requires a reciprocal flow of energy. This is not about scorekeeping, but about a simple awareness of whether the energy is flowing in both directions or only one. If you consistently feel drained after interacting with someone, that is not a sign of your spiritual largesse. It is a signal of an energetic imbalance that must be addressed. Your exhaustion is not a badge of honor. It is an alarm bell. Boundaries are not walls that shut others out. They are essential psychological structures that define where you end and others begin. When you fail to establish and maintain them, you are not only setting yourself up for suffering, but you are also robbing yourself of the possibility of authentic connection. Without boundaries, a relationship is not an interaction. It is a merger. It is not a meeting. It is a fusion. Jung understood that the pleaser and the rescuer do not simply lack boundaries. They misunderstand what boundaries are. You have been operating under the false belief that boundaries are selfish, that they are a sign of a lack of love or compassion. But the psychological truth is the opposite. Boundaries are a prerequisite for true love, not an obstacle to it. If you do not know where you end and another begins, if you do not understand what is your responsibility and what is not, if you cannot differentiate your emotions from theirs, you cannot have an authentic connection. You are merely a canvas for their projections, not a person engaged in a genuine relationship. The absence of boundaries does not create intimacy. It creates confusion, resentment, and eventual disconnection. The sacrifices you make, the psychological sacrifices of denying your needs, violating your boundaries, and hiding your truth, do not actually help the people you love. They create dependence instead of strength, entitlement instead of gratitude, exploitation instead of appreciation. When you consistently put another's needs before your own, consistently absorb their negative consequences, consistently offer unearned understanding, you are not practicing compassion. You are stunting their growth. Jung would offer the seeming paradox that your overfunctioning and your rescuing not only fail to help your loved ones, but actively harm them by preventing them from developing their own resilience, responsibility, and respect for others' boundaries. A parent who never lets a child fail robs them of resilience. Likewise, a partner who perpetually forgives poor treatment does not inspire change. They enable it. A friend who never complains does not strengthen a bond. They keep it superficial. In these situations, your kindness is not authentic compassion. It is conflict avoidance masquerading as virtue. The psychological truth is that shielding others from the consequences of their choices is not an act of kindness, but an act of interference that prevents their growth and development. The path to true power, the power that comes from psychological integration, not a desire for domination, begins by facing a difficult truth. Your kindness, your need to save, has become your prison. The very qualities you thought would win you love have attracted exploitation. The self-denial you believed would lead to intimacy has left you isolated. The understanding you hoped would be reciprocated has been taken for granted. Jung would say this outcome was predictable because your kindness was coming not from wholeness, but from a wound, not from integration, but from fragmentation. True power comes not from having power over others, but from an integration within the self. This integrated power emerges when you embrace your disowned parts, when you honor both your capacity for compassion and your need for boundaries, when you value both your ability to give and your right to receive. An integrated power does not need to dominate others out of fear or compensation. It allows you to be kind without being used, to love without losing yourself, to care without being depleted. This is the kind of power Jung spoke of, not power over, but power with. Not domination, but authentic presence. Not control, but integrity. The transformation from an unconscious pleaser and rescuer to a person of conscious kindness is not a simple or linear process. It is a deep psychological rewiring that challenges your core beliefs about your worth, your right to exist, and your place in relationships. Expect resistance, not only from those who have benefited from your limitless generosity and willingness to save, but from the part of yourself that equates self-expression with selfishness, needs with weakness, and boundaries with abandonment. Jung would say this internal resistance is predictable and necessary. It is your old psychological structures fighting for their survival, even as you outgrow them. When you feel guilt for saying no, shame for voicing a need, or fear for setting a boundary, do not take these feelings as truth, but observe them as the death throes of an old way of being. This discomfort is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is a sign you are disrupting a pattern that has been entrenched for decades. This disruption is not destruction. It is the necessary discomfort of rebuilding. You are not becoming a worse person. You are becoming a more whole person. And wholeness is the only foundation upon which true kindness and real love can stand. Your transformation requires patience as you learn new ways of being, new behaviors, new patterns, new forms of authenticity that may feel foreign and frightening at first. The truth of your journey to wholeness is that it will require a death of sorts, not a physical death, but the death of the idealized self-image you have spent a lifetime constructing and defending. The perfect person who is never angry, who has no selfish thoughts, who is always available, Always kind, always rescuing this construct must die, so that your true self can live. Jung called this psychological process of death and rebirth. Night Sea Journey, a dark passage in which one identity dissolves so another can emerge. During this transformation, you may feel lost, confused, and even terrified as the familiar landmarks of your personality disappear and new, previously disowned aspects emerge. People who knew the old you may feel uncomfortable or even hostile as you become more real. Relationships built on your willingness to accommodate and rescue may crumble when that willingness is no longer automatic. But Jung would reassure you that this discomfort, this disorientation, and this reshuffling of relationships is not proof of a mistake, but confirmation of a true transformation. A butterfly is not merely an improved caterpillar. It is an entirely new being. Likewise, a whole person is not just an improved version of a pleaser and rescuer. You will be a fundamentally new creature with the capacity for honesty, boundaries, and relationships built on truth, not pretense, on reciprocity, not rescue,